All right. Good morning and welcome. All right, we'll get started. We can get a little early, I guess, and we'll see if people drift up and join us since early service got out a little early too. But again, we're looking this spring at Jesus said what? Kind of looking at the hard words of Jesus. Last week we looked, or last time, I guess it's been a couple weeks now. Because we did it in the first Sunday in January, and then we had a cold snow that no one came, and then last week President Turner talked about community and district stuff. So yeah, the first one we looked at was about hating your parents. And this one kind of goes along with a similar theme. Where we're talking about the hard words of Jesus, where Jesus says in Matthew 10:34, he says he came to bring not peace, but a sword, which can seem kind of strange to us as we do that. All right. So again, do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. So I got the whole verse in there. So as we look at these hard sayings of Jesus, though, when in doubt, look at the context, and that's going to be one of the places we look when we're trying to understand exactly what Jesus is saying in these passages. And so this is the broader context here in Matthew chapter 10, and Jesus is talking to his disciples about discipleship, and so that's kind of the general context. Could someone read this for us as we go then?
So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a person's enemies will be those of his own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it.
All right, so as we're looking at this in context, does anything jump out at you? Anything you noticed as you looked at the broader context of this quote?
Well, you just pointed out there's one, the very most important.
Right, yep, yeah.
Who got the one?
Right, and so again, when we talked last week or last time, almost a month ago, I guess, when we talked last time, that when it talks about hating Jesus says to hate your parents, it's not necessarily, it's not hate your parents. It really, strongly dislike them, avoid them, discourage them, but there's something more you have to love more. For first commandment issues of there's one God, He's it, anything else can't be as important as God. If it becomes more important than God, then it's become an idol to you. And so even family can become that. And so we've got a similar idea here that it's not necessarily, a lot of it's a matter of priorities. It's not saying, oh, you became a Christian, well, that means immediately disown all of your unbelieving family, avoid them. Mark and avoid them. It means you've got a new set of priorities now, and that's going to affect how these things go. Good. Anything else? Nope. All right. So again, when we're talking, so Jesus says, I have not come to bring peace but a sword, but that seems pretty odd considering the season that we went through a month ago, Christmas, where we hear all these titles of Jesus. What are these titles from Isaiah?
Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting
And Prince of Peace. Right. So, which sounds like if you're the Prince of Peace, you should be bringing peace, right? I mean, this doesn't sound like I'm not bringing peace.
Bring a sword, never ever a little actually seen in the swing of a sword.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yep. When the angels appear and say the message, what's this baby Jesus supposed to bring? Peace. The message from the angel, glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace. Goodwill toward men, goodwill toward all. Earlier, just 5 chapters earlier from where we are, we're in Matthew 10, and Matthew 5 begins with the Beatitudes. And what's one of these Beatitudes? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. So, but again, like we've been talking about, so we have all these verses that Jesus is supposed to bring peace, and now he's saying he's not bringing peace. What's up with that? Again, like we talked about, when we're told to hate your parents, it's a matter of priorities. It's honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and you may live long in the land. That shift from in the fourth commandment from primarily about God to primarily about other people, but you've got parents kind of in that representation of God. As God gives authorities to parents, and that's how we understand all authority goes that way. But again, the priority is still God, then your parents. But we see other places where there's division within families because of following God or not, or division within people. The end of Joshua, so he's led the people into the promised land after Moses died. They've defeated Jericho and all these other places, and now Joshua's kind of giving his farewell speech, like Deuteronomy is Moses' farewell speech, and saying, look, you got to choose you got to serve somebody. You got to choose who you will serve. Whether the gods your father served in the region beyond the river, or the God of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So it's, Joshua saying, well, I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want there to be division, but there's this clear point of, are you serving God or are you not serving God? And I and my family are going to serve God. And so that's going to create division with those who are choosing not to serve God. All right? So again, division is not the purpose of Jesus coming, it's the result of Jesus coming. Does that make sense? Okay. So, any thoughts, questions, comments on what we've done here thus far? Yeah, Jan. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, ideally there's love there, but at least that commandment of honoring your father and mother while they're, partly while you're under their authority, and then also just, the recognition though that, honoring them means different things in different life stages and different cultures and things, and how you live that out is important. So, no, good thought.
It's a good example of generational sin.
Okay.
You start out with like abusive
Mm-hmm.
father and mother,
Mm-hmm.
drug addict or something.
Yep.
And it's the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And the next. They don't know how to love their parents.
Right.
So how would they love?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of talked a little bit about that with my confirmation kids. We've been going through just finished going through the first article of the Creed, where it talks, God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth. And, well, we call God Father. Why do we call God Father? Well, that's what God says to tells us to call him. But that can be a challenge for people who haven't had good earthly fathers.
Or they're hung up on pronouns.
Right. Well, that's what. Well, we're respecting God's chosen pronouns by calling him Father. So, but yeah, that with recognizing God as Father. But yeah, again, this. That idea of generational sin. Yeah, that sins affect. Can affect generations down the line and can be very hard cycles to break. Well, it's part of why Joshua was like, okay, well, we've got a new start here in this promised land. Let's make sure we start off on the right foot now. So if you can serve God or not, we're choosing to serve him. But all right, any other questions, comments here? All right, again, just kind of like when we talked last time we met, that when Jesus says don't hate your parents, or Jesus says hate your parents, it's not hate, it's love less, and that kind of affects here too. It's not that you hate these other people that are being divided against you. Now you keep loving them, but you're loving them, or you're placing their authority under God's authority, and so you follow God rather than them. All right. Again, like whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. So again, that hate, the not hate, love less. The more than me phrase is kind of the key phrase there, even if we often we'll hear something, hear it differently. All right, because again, it all comes down to the first commandment: you shall have no other gods. What does this mean? We should fear, love, and trust in God above all things. So we're trusting in God above all things. Means we're not trusting in some of these other things that God gives us that are good, family, friends, others, if that interferes with our relationship with God or our ability to follow God. All right. And one way we can kind of see how this works is last week's gospel lesson. From Mark 4, we see part of this come into play too, in terms of both, well, do you love your family or do you love God? And also following Jesus is going to cause division. And could someone read this for us?
Now, after John the Baptist was arrested, Jesus came into Galilee, proclaiming the gospel of God and saying, "The time is fulfilled and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe in the gospel." Passing alongside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, the brother of Simon, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." And immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on a little farther, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, who were in their boat mending their nets. And immediately he called them, and they left their father, Zebedee, in the boat with the hired servants and followed him.
All right. So we get some division happening here, right? And some, what are you placing your family first or Jesus first? And they seem to be pretty clearly putting Jesus first if they're leaving their their jobs behind, they're leaving their father in the boat. And going off to follow Jesus. All right. Any thoughts on that? Or?
Immediacy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and so.
Is there another word for that in the Greek, or?
No, I mean, that's probably the best translation, but it is one of those words that, now we're in the year of the 3-year lectionary, the 3-year cycle of readings, that most of the gospel reading is going to be from Mark, and so we're going to hear immediately a lot, because Mark seems to just kind of, Mark's the shortest one, and so in general kind of explains things the shortest amount, and we kind of just go and immediately and immediately and immediately and immediately just running, almost breathless through the story. There's a couple spots that Mark's accounts are longer, slightly different than the other ones, but for the most part he's shorter. In fact, this started in 14, I think, if I remember correctly, verses 12 and 13, we get the baptism of Jesus and the temptation of Jesus, like in 2 verses. Mark's the shortest book, and it was written to be read. I mean, there was a group of seminary professors a few years ago who would travel around and kind of perform just the Gospel of Mark, and they can read through it in 2 hours out loud. So, Luke's a little more wordy, but he's Greek, that's why. All right, yeah, Jeanette.
So when he called them, they were unfamiliar with him. Did God put that in their brain right then, so they responded? I mean,
that seems to be part of it. Some people have tried to think, well, Jesus must have, he was this big buff carpenter with lots of charisma and could call people, and they'd follow him right away. I mean, in John's gospel, we get that some of these disciples had been following John the Baptist too, and so there's at least some prior connection, and so they emphasize that. But I mean, Mark doesn't seem, again, Mark's simplifying and shortening, and just immediately this happened. Jesus speaks, and immediately things happen, and kind of emphasizing that power of Jesus' word. Yeah.
how do you see this if you're Zebedee? I mean,
Yeah, you got to feel sorry for Zebedee, don't you? That, oh, well, there go James and John, there goes, and so, whether they had other brothers or not, there's some debate over how seasonal fishing was, and whether that plays a role in the fact that the disciples are fishermen, so that they're able to follow Jesus more easily during the downtime than they are, in the harder time, in the busier times.
Well, and he wasn't a complete stranger. John had been out doing his thing.
Right. Yeah. So John the Baptist was there. I mean, Jesus is in Galilee. He's in the same area that he grew up in. So again, conceivably there could be some connections there, either family or business or something. But yeah, we're not necessarily told that, and so it looks definitely impressive that Jesus says, "Follow me," and they immediately drop everything and do.
I mean, when John baptized Jesus, maybe it wasn't the headline of the next day's paper, but the word got out.
Yeah.
What he said, what was said, how many may have heard what God Himself said. I think that's around.
Yeah, I mean, and this is before, but like the end of the gospel lesson we heard this morning. Jesus drives out the unclean spirit from the synagogue, and then the last verse talks about how his fame spreads throughout the land, throughout the area. And so you get some of these. They've been hearing some of this. But yeah.
Why were they handpicked disciples all in the same age range?
That's a good question.
I mean, why couldn't Zebedee be one?
Well, again, maybe some of it's the family state that, I mean, Zebedee's got family to provide for. James and John, presumably young enough, don't. I mean, so they don't. Right.
You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. So Zebedee can't abandon his responsibilities to family, but James and John are younger enough, don't have all of that responsibility yet, so they could. I mean, there's a reason that kind of, you know, young, what we consider, late high school, college, or young adult are the ones that have the energy and enthusiasm to go out and do these crazy things, for good and ill. But yeah.
Wasn't Peter the only one that we know was married?
Right, and we only get that, that's kind of an aside that Peter's mother-in-law gets healed by Jesus, and we don't know anything else about his family. Aside from his brother Andrew, but yeah. So there's some, and later on, Paul will talk about. Do we talk? We'll talk about how his advice is for people not to get married just because once you're married, your attention's split between family and God. Whereas if you're not married, well, you can just serve God, but recognizing that. Not everyone can handle that calling. Go ahead and get married so you're not being led into sin in other ways. But so yeah, I mean, so part of it probably that age range is to that freedom, lack of responsibility or things like that too. All right. All right, and then we find that also that division happens when some family members are believers and some are not. And this happens even with Jesus. John 7:5 tells us in an aside too that for not even Jesus' brothers believed in him at this point. So Jesus is doing some miracles and off teaching, and they're like, yeah, well, you shouldn't be in Jerusalem because we know they might come after you, but we still don't really totally buy what you're selling. Obviously, eventually they come around. Jesus seems to appear to James. James is recorded in one of those post-resurrection account things. But yeah, that you can imagine. My girls do upward basketball up at the Plex Christ Community, the E-Free Church, and during halftime they always do some sort of evangelistic something or other. And they had a Christian comedian talking about how Jesus and his brothers growing up as Jesus' brother must have been, with James going, messing up, going to his parents for advice, and they said, "Why can't you just be more like Jesus? Why don't you ask yourself what would Jesus do, and maybe make a bracelet for yourself. You can remember that and things, or that James trying to do what Jesus did and failing and things. But you can imagine being held up to that standard. It would be hard, and then but eventually they all seem to figure that out. So Jesus deals with division within his family over that. And that's another thing. Those of you who teach English classes or work with internationals or come to Fish or have in the past know some of our international students have to deal with that kind of division within their family a lot when they become Christian, especially maybe struggling with that. Well, how do I honor my parents and their religion without, now that I'm a Christian and they're disowning me because I'm become a Christian kind of thing. And we talked about that too when we went through kind of Christian history, and that was a big challenge for the missionaries in China was how honoring your ancestors is a huge part of some of the Eastern culture, and so how do you honor parents without worshiping them and walking that fine line was a challenge too. But yeah, so there's division certainly present in a lot of those cases. All right, and then Paul, writing to the Corinthians, who of course seem to have virtually every problem known to man, one of the challenges he deals with is this idea of then, well, so you're a believer and your family isn't. How do you deal with that? And this is what he says. Could someone read this for us?
To the rest I say, I, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the believing wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise, your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Division.
Oh, sorry, that's, couldn't remember exactly how far I went. All right, so what's Paul saying here?
It's a hard passage.
It is hard passage, okay, so,
The believing spouse has to hang in there.
yeah, believing spouse has to hang in there. That just because your spouse is unbelieving isn't necessarily grounds for divorce. Or at least you don't initiate it. But recognizing that, well, if one's believing and one's not, that's hard. But the example of the believing spouse can have an impact on the unbelieving spouse and on the kids. And so don't just separate because of that. If the unbelieving spouse separates, then that's not on you. But try and stay together and win them to faith that way. Yeah.
When you're doing your premarital counseling,
Yeah.
and you have a good Lutheran who's marrying somebody who's an unbeliever, how do you handle that?
Good question. Try and talk through it and figure out and get them to think about it. Because sometimes they've thought about it and talked about it and tried to reach some sort of compromise or something, and some haven't. There's sometimes when that happens, kind of combine the premarital counseling with the adult instruction, and then give the option at the end of, okay, well, now you've heard this. Where are you on that? Have you figured things out? Yes or no, that kind of thing. Because again, a lot of times, young people will think, well, it's a difference, but it's not as big a difference now. But recognizing that 2, 5, 10 years down the line, once you have kids and you're trying to figure out how to raise your kids, that's when a lot of the issues start coming up.
So you would counsel to compromise rather than saying that's a deal breaker?
I think it would again depend on the situation and how things are coming up. It would be at least have the discussion and see where it goes. And most of the time, if they're willing to do a church wedding, there's at least some sort of openness to to that. Whether how much that openness actually comes into practice after that is a whole other thing. But usually, again, there's at least some sort of openness to start attending or start thing. And then the challenge too is a lot of the people that we do premarital counseling for here, well, they're gone. I mean, they get married and then they're off to go to college, they graduate, they get married, and then go off somewhere else. And then we can try and support them in some ways, but varies how well we're able to do that.
Pastor Dave, I've
Yeah.
always been intrigued with that.
Okay.
This whole conversation about, because there's a lot of things when you first meet someone, you're not even thinking about. You know what I
Right?
mean?
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
but yeah, it's good discussion and,
Yeah.
and things. But then as I got older, I said, well, I don't have that power. I'm not God.
Right.
And so, yes, I'll be an example. And I think that's what this implies. I'm not,
Yep.
but that goes to a lot of different things. When you talk about division, it could be
Yep.
political division, it could be all
Right.
kinds of division.
Yeah.
And people think that you're God on that. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I have.
Yeah, well, I mean, in any case, yeah, that it's,
I'm gonna save them.
right, yeah, well, we're going to get married so that I can change them, and recognizing that, well, you're that's not, whatever it isn't going to work. I hear a bit of laughter from those of you who've been married a bit. So,
I mean, it'd be great if I had those superpowers.
right, yeah, yeah. Or even just, the ESP that comes with the wedding ring, right? So you can read her mind and know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, what she wants you to be doing, yeah. So,
In reality, these words go even beyond marital relations.
Right.
Because if you think of the world that we live in, it isn't just that little
Right.
small space.
Oh,
It can be dealing with anybody, because you can have those same kind of problems having to
Right.
work through.
yep. Yeah, and that's a struggle and challenge. Yeah, do you have, if you have unbelieving family members that aren't necessarily just your spouse, or if you're, your coworkers, your kids' friends and their families, or things that, how much of that is, well, we have to stay separate from them and make sure we're just with our Christian family so that we can grow and learn that way, or how much of it, or open ourselves up to being able to witness and be a part of the larger society and encounter these people who are unbelievers, but also recognizing that some of that interaction and goes both ways, that we get influenced by them like they get influenced by us, and balancing that thing out. That out. And yeah, that is certainly a challenge. All right.
I don't like when people answer, we're going to agree to disagree, because you can't disagree on salvation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be a helpful stance, at least pausing and recognizing that the Spirit needs to be at work, and that timing might not just be right, and keeping the relationship open in terms as the Spirit has time to work.
You answered that pretty good.
Oh, thanks. I try.
What you mean is like
Yeah.
a pause between conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me a chance to think.
Yeah.
Because I always think, well, I'm not going to ever agree with you. So that's like, we can pause all we want. But that's that sinfulness in me,
Yeah.
being stubborn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you mean.
Yeah. Good. All right. And also there's some times when division, even when both love Jesus, can be both painful and fruitful. That Jesus comes to bring, following Jesus can cause division. And again, sometimes that's both bad, but God can use it for good. And one example of that is Paul and Barnabas. I don't know if you remember what goes on with them, but if someone could read this for us then, from Acts 15.
And after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let us return and visit the brothers in every city where we proclaim the word of the Lord, and see how they are." Now Barnabas wanted to take with them John, called Mark. But Paul thought best not to take with them one who had withdrawn from them in Pamphylia, and had not gone with them to the work. And there arose a sharp disagreement, so that they separated from each other. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and departed, having been commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. And he went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches.
Right. All right. So what caused the division there between Paul and Barnabas?
Well, a disagreement, because he had departed from.
Right. I mean, so Paul and Barnabas had been a team. This is the end of Acts 15. The beginning of Acts 15 is the Council at Jerusalem where they explain, look at how God is reaching the Gentiles. And so the church says, great, let's do that. But then even out of that, then they want to go again. But the big problem is John Mark, who'd been with them for part of the previous journey, but had apparently, not literally jumped ship, but had stopped had decided, oh, nope, I'm done with this travel. I'm heading home. And so Barnabas wants to bring John Mark with him again, and Paul doesn't. So Paul's like, no, well, he had his chance to come travel with us. He left us. I don't want to be abandoned again. He's not coming with us. And Barnabas is like, well, no. Barnabas, who, maybe this is some of those different personalities. Paul can be a little stubborn at times. Barnabas, son of encouragement. He's willing to give. Oh, sure, let's give John Mark a second chance. This will be great. It'll be fine. And so they end up dividing. But what good came out of this division? Right, now you've got instead of just Paul and Barnabas traveling around, you got Paul going through Syria and Cilicia, so he's staying mainland, and it said Barnabas and Mark go on boat. They go to Cyprus. So now you've got two of them going around, building, spreading the word, encouraging the churches, that kind of thing. So
in a sense, the message is the same, but they just
yeah.
They didn't get mad at one another because of whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Hi. That's all right.
My new coat. I'm just getting my coat out. I'm really sorry. Don't mind me.
They're causing division.
Right. There we go. Yeah, Bob.
Is this the context in which we should look at what's happened to the Protestant church?
Maybe.
Division.
Right.
Division.
I mean, that's the positive spin on why there's so many denominations, is that then they have different emphases, different things, different ways that they can appeal to different people, and so the division could be a good thing. Yeah, the bad thing is when we're dividing over strict theological issues that are, that are getting in the way of people knowing Jesus, and so how to, and dividing then into the church that has it right and the church that doesn't, because we don't like the church that's leading people astray and that kind of thing. So
you're talking about strict, specific items like things you view as sin.
Potentially, or potentially it's how's God at work and does that line up with things? So, but yeah, no, I think the positive spin on the fact that there's so many denominations is there's a lot of different ways for God to reach people. The negative spin is there's a lot of ways that we all get God wrong and are leading people further off in a lot of in various ways. So. All right. So what are some of the more playful divisions you've seen in families? Any sports rivalries? Hawkeyes and Cyclones. Oh, that's not a playful division around here, is it? Yeah. So again, I mean, the divisions happen partly also because we're just a bunch of different people. I mean, so that have different likes and different dislikes and things. But there's also divisions happen because of that. All right. Have you ever had a serious division in your family? And if anyone wants to share, great. If not, that's fine too. You can just kind of acknowledge and know that, recognizing that. Then that's the challenge is that, divisions within families are harder because they're the people you're around. You're either potentially around the most or you have the most connection to, and you're stuck with them. Whether you're stuck being family to them, whether you or they like it or not. So that can be challenging that way.
Mostly political stuff.
Okay, yeah,
And then when it comes to faith, I would say not being, what would you say, committed
okay,
wholeheartedly. You know, it's like surface faith and not, yeah, you know, I'll go next month, you know, that sort of stuff.
right,
And that becomes a problem, especially if you are, you have a dictatorial type of mindset.
right,
Not saying I do.
right,
I'm not saying that I do.
But,
right,
but you know,
Yeah.
it's like when I'm out and about, I run into a lot of people other than family that are friends or may not be a friend, but are atheists. And I don't run away from it. I get in a conversation with
right,
them. But some people do, you know, and I have a problem. I have a tendency, a light bulb goes off in my head. It's like I said before, I'm not the converter. I'm not but I want to model it as best
Right.
as I can. So how can you not be in a conversation and mock, you know what I mean?
right, yeah, if you in the conversation, yeah, or that also comes up in premarital counseling too, that, you know, do you want to win the argument or do you want to win the relationship? And that, because sometimes you can win an argument, but you didn't win the relationship. And so, yeah, recognizing those things too. All right, again, division is not the purpose of Jesus coming, but the result of Jesus coming. What's the difference there?
Come to divide, but because he came, there are people who do not accept it.
Right.
And therefore, the divisions occur.
Yeah, he came to save the whole world, but there's people who reject it, and that just creates division that way. All right, is division always bad? Why or why not?
Sometimes division is good,
Okay,
you know.
yeah,
Because then it depends on for me it's discussion. And then I say, oh, is that why you choose X, Y, and Z? As long as it's not a sinful,
Yeah.
you know, type of thing. But again, I mean, I'm in a conversation with a person that's Muslim, and he's trying his best to convert me, and I'm trying my best to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, I'm professing my faith to him as well. And then we come to the conclusion, okay, let's just be friends. But, you know.
Is division always bad? If you're not open to it, it can be hard.
yeah. Yeah,
A cooling off period is often very helpful.
yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, once you get into that, when division comes with, you know, strong emotions and connections and those things, that it's can be hard to reconcile, hard to think things through. That as you get angrier, you get more heated in your emotions. It's harder to think creatively about how to handle differences. And so, saying fine, let's cool off.
Is that being narrow-minded?
Is what being narrow-minded?
Well, if you're not open to divisions, are you narrow-minded?
I think it's, again, it can be good or bad. What's the Chesterton quote, I think? The purpose of an open mind, like an open mouth, is to close it again on something solid. And so again, recognizing that, you know, that these, or it's Hegel, I think, the thesis, antithesis, synthesis, that is how you kind of deal with arguments, that there's a statement, there's a contradictory statement, and they work together, and either one wins or you get a compromise of the two, and that's the new thesis. And that's ideally kind of how arguments, and those kind of things should work. But, all right, what would you say to someone who's experienced irreconcilable division in church, in family, or elsewhere?
I'd say let's talk about it.
Talk about it, okay.
Get more talk.
Yep. Pray about it. Pray about, yes, that's a big thing too. Again, recognizing it's not all about you, but God can be at work and soften hearts and things. And
Sometimes being the listener is more important than anything.
listening, right. Yeah, you've got two ears and one mouth. Should tell us something about how much we should talk and how much we should listen, huh?
And I always think, even when you listen to them, you have to acknowledge to the people that you are listening.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we wait until they breathe and then we,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That, the reflective listening to repeat back what they've said in a way that you both agree is what they said.
I mean,
Yeah.
you could say, well, I understand what you're saying, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's,
Because a lot of times we don't. We just
Yeah.
wait until we get in there.
and then once there's a pause, we want to jump in with our own insights instead of proving things. Yeah, that's why I think I've told this before. Pastor's counselor class in seminary, the professors began by, and we were on trimesters then, so it was kind of like just an 8-week class. And they're like, "We can't teach you to counsel in 8 weeks. We might be able to teach you how to listen, so we're going to try and do that." With the idea of reflective listening, and because otherwise, guys especially tend to jump immediately to problem solving without listening first, and getting through the listening part first is important. So talk, pray, listen. Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, but see, you throw a wrench in there, the experience,
Yeah.
I mean, how can you talk to somebody that just don't want to?
Yeah.
Do you just wipe off your, what do they call it, dust off?
Yeah, wipe the dust off your feet and move somewhere else. Yeah. I mean, sometimes that is that recognition that, well, maybe you're not the one to be able to talk with them about this. That maybe someone else who, with a different history or different way of presenting things or something, will do a better job than you. Yeah. So, Jeanette.
Pray for yourself too, that
Yeah.
you don't have the anger toward the fact that it's, irreconcilable.
Yeah.
At least at the moment, it seems like that.
Yeah. So again, pray about it. Don't necessarily just pray about the other person, but pray for yourself too, and pray for the situation in general. Good.
Not all relationships can be reconciled.
And not all relationships can be reconciled, right?
If it's toxic,
Yep.
you gotta walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And have you seen God bring good out of a divisive situation? Yeah, Don.
I just can't help but when I listen to this, think about a personal situation, if I may share it. This happens in a lot of farm families.
Oh, yeah.
I had 2 uncles that couldn't get along because one disagreed with the other about how the family farm should be settled and so forth.
Yep.
They just couldn't get along with each other, even though they went to the same church, lived in the same town.
Yep.
And I just couldn't stand it, living in Ames, and this was back in Illinois. So on one visit to Illinois, I went to visit with the one uncle, and I said, your brother is in the hospital, and he may not come out of the hospital alive. I said, is there any way that you could go reconcile your differences with him? And we talked for about 4 hours one afternoon under a shade tree. And thank God, I learned later that he went and reconciled his differences with his brother, and they became really close friends. And we went to visit with him every day in the hospital.
Wow.
It was so touching to
Yeah.
me to see that.
Good. Yep.
I'm not saying I did it, but it was.
No, but yeah, no,
It
it's,
made a difference in consideration.
yeah, God is a God of reconciliation too, of bringing people together. Good. All right. Have you ever had to choose between a human relationship and your relationship with God?
would say yes, for sure. Less maybe relationship and more just conversations people have.
Okay, yeah,
You have to decide, you know, like, I'm risking my conscience by being here still.
Mhm.
Or I'm, you know, by tolerating this discussion, so I need to leave, say something. I feel like that's kind of the same boat.
You
yep,
know, when I get these type of questions, I have to think deep and long. Because, you know, when I was youthful and I was gullible, no, I just went along, you know, peer pressure. But then as my faith grows, I don't even have to say anything, if you know what I mean?
yeah.
Because I'm trying to model it 24/7, and they tend to go away. You know, and so, yes and no, you know, that's a real difficult one as we grow as Christians, and so.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no.
Yes and no. All right, good. All right. All righty, any final thoughts? Well, good. We even started a little early, and that still took the whole time. Next week, we're doing Mission Sunday, so we're going to do something a little different. I guess some of the Sunday school kids, we're going to Skype, do a video call with the Grolkis, the missionaries in Botswana with Lutheran Bible translators. And so we'll join them for that, but I think it'll be in the Student Center. I'll make sure we know about, that's in the bulletin and stuff. But, so we'll do that next week, and then we'll be back to the book again the week afterwards. So, great. Thank you all for coming.
Have you heard anything? What's the status of Amanda Roche? I know she was engaged.